Alright. BCA-101. D32. This was Friday, day 32. Okay, we're talking about security. And we're finishing up project number 4. We have a skills-based assessment on Monday, and the students can do that on any computer they want. We have some things going on in the classroom, so if they want to do it in the classroom, they'll have to start at 2. The assessment's available from 1 to 4 p.m. on Monday. All right, we did a review next, and we started out talking about data. Of course, we're talking about digital data. Excuse me, talking about digital data, and so we looked at two things. We have to manage data. Okay, we have to make it available. And if we're making data available, we want it to be available to those that need the data in order to do their job or share ideas or whatever. And we want the data to remain accurate, the integrity of the data. In some cases, like at the school, there's legal consequences. I can't give out student information about students to inappropriate areas, so there's confidentiality there, and I can't change student information and then distribute it, break the integrity of the data. Same things at a hospital, HIPAA rules and so forth. There are consequences there's rules, legal consequences when you manage data, and that even affects data that's being moved and so forth. So, data theft or data manipulation. Where can I have the states of data? Well, we have data stored, data in transit, like through the internet, or data being processed, like it's actually in the CPU and memory. All data can be vulnerable at all those locations, so we have to take into consideration how to maintain the integrity, make sure the data is accessible to only those who are supposed to have it, and yet make it available to those who have to have it. Okay. Like we have to turn in grades. We got to do the grades have to be made available to somebody to put in the transcript at school. So people can manipulate data and steal data, just look at it, or change it. That affects both of those. And then we talked about identity theft, where somebody steals somebody's identity and then uses it for their own personal gain. All right. If we take a look here, we talked a little bit more about the internet. Information goes through an ISP to get into the internet and back out. We also talked about large companies can use a service provider to create their connections, like Walmart. Walmart can use a service provider to connect all their stores. They don't connect their stores through the internet. They probably have access to the internet, and we can go through the internet to order things through Walmart. But as one store, we got a store here with a LAN, store here with a LAN, and when you connect them together, you have a WAN. So the internet is not a WAN itself, but what it does is it creates WANs by connecting all these networks together by the internet. We went through the skills practice, and I'm not going to repeat that all here, but we went through the skills practice and answered any questions or went through anything people might have had difficulty on. We talked about looking up if you have a, we talked about DNS, I guess that's where this lit up. Make sure we knew what DNS is, domain name services, and how you can do a lookup of a name and find the IP, and then Aaron would tell you who the ISP is. There are other places that will do that, but you got to be careful. Some websites, they're really just pulling you in so that you would click their advertisements. But Aaron is where it's actually kept, so that's the best place to look if you're going to take an IP and find out where it's from, which ISP distributed those IP addresses. We looked at some examples of a web server, and we also did some recon. I'll show you that here in a second. We talked about cyber attacks, attacking using digital means or using technology rather than tanks and so forth. So usually, a lot of times those would be done, for example, to instill terror or remove services, like if the power grid was brought down for an extended period of time. Things that would escalate fear within the world, or affect elections, or, you know, there's just distributed false news, break into things and distribute things, alter things like that. So we talked a little bit about that, and then we said, how do these happen? And we said, who, pretty much anybody nowadays with access to the internet can figure out how to create some type of attack. Should be okay. First thing, we did some examples of reconnaissance, actually legal stuff where you just find tons of information, discover some weakness with how people are securing, and then you can break in, cover your path, create a back door so you can keep getting in and not be discovered. We'll talk a little more about that later on. Alright. So, next week we will finish Unit 6 on security. You'll take the skills-based assessment on Monday. And then we start databases. We'll take our first look at databases next week. We'll start looking at them Wednesday and Friday. Alright. Getting close to being done. Make sure if you have any questions, let me know.